Members, we have a tight schedule because 27 deputations are going to speak today. We have a quorum and it is also the appointed time. There are important things to explain to the public and also to members. Can we now invite the administration and all the deputations to come in now? And please be reminded that we have another meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll meet again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Today, there are 27 deputations and individuals coming to our subcommittee meeting to speak. We have a tight schedule today. Each deputation or individual will be given 4 minutes. Altogether, that will make up the 2 hours. And perhaps members may not have a lot of time to ask questions of the deputations. Okay. Okay, let me make the best use of our time. Let me introduce the administration representatives to you first. We have Mr. Elvis Au, Assistant Director, EPD, Dr. Leung Siu-Fai, Deputy Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation, Mr. Joseph Sham, Assistant Director of AFCD, and also Mr. Leung Chi-Hung, Senior Country Parks Officer from the AFCD. Thank you, officials, for coming to listen to deputations and individuals. I'd like to thank the deputations and individuals who are mostly district council members for coming to the subcommittee meeting today. You should know the proceedings very well. You have a microphone in front of you. It is extremely sensitive, so you don't have to speak too closely to it. I'd also like to tell you the channels. If you wear the earpiece, channel 0 is the floor, channel 1 Cantonese, channel 2 English.
Something about the simultaneous translation first. As usual, please put on your earpiece for the simultaneous interpretation. Channel 0 would be the sound right on the spot, and channel 1 is for Cantonese and channel 2 for English.
Today, deputations and individuals will be each given 4 minutes. And I'd like to state at the start that since we have a very tight schedule, I hope you will stop when you hear the bell ring. Please stop at 4 minutes. And also, when you speak today here at the subcommittee, you will not be protected or exempted under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Before we invite deputations and individuals to speak, I'd like to say something to members. 2 days ago, we received a letter from the Heung Cook, which has been distributed to members. I believe you have a copy in front of you. And the paper number is the letter from the Heung Cook. What's the paper number? It doesn't have a paper number assigned to it yet because it was sent to us last night. It was faxed to members, so it has not been accorded a serial number yet. The letter is dated the 1st of November 2013. It was a Friday, near the time when we finished our work, so it was only faxed to members last night. The Heung tells us in this letter that we should suspend the scrutiny of the order. I'd like to ask the legal advisor to explain to us the procedure for the scrutiny and also the negative vetting procedure. And what does it mean to have negative vetting and a scrutiny of this order? Legal advisor, thank you, Chairman. Members are scrutinizing a piece of subsidiary legislation. Under Cap 1 of the laws of Hong Kong, it is stated that the subsidiary legislation this time around would be made by negative vetting, meaning that actually the legal notice has become part of the laws of Hong Kong, unless after scrutiny by the Legislative Council, some amendments will be made to it. Barring that, it will become effective on the 30th of December this year. This is what is meant by having negative vetting applied to subsidiary legislation. As the Chairman said, the letter says that the subcommittee should best suspend or postpone the scrutiny of the order. Now, actually, if the legislation is subject to negative vetting, it is not very meaningful to postpone the scrutiny because, as I said, the order has been made, it has been gazetted. Unless it is amended, it will come into effect on the 30th of December. This is my legal opinion. Now, I'd like to explain to the relevant persons and also the public whether or not we scrutinize the order it has been made. If we scrutinize it, then before a certain deadline, if some members of the Legislative Council do not support the order, they can propose to amend it or to repeal it within a deadline. And then a vote will be taken at the Council meeting. Okay, members, if you have no questions, I think you know the procedures well. If you have no questions, I will now invite the deputations to speak. The first one, Mr. Paul Zimmerman.
Chairperson and members, protecting Sai Kung Country Park from development at Dalong Sai 1 can only be achieved by incorporation into the country park. The threat of incompatible development and enclaves is the small house policy. And to protect country parks from these small houses, there are three methods. One is to incorporate them into country parks. Two is to apply statutory plans under the Town Planning Board, but they will need additional strict measures of control. The third one is to fulfill the legitimate ding rights with land outside the enclaves, a transfer of land. Now, the last one is a simple solution. However, it could be in breach with the current containment policy of the small houses, where we're trying to restrict them to the village environs. Mr. Christopher CHEUNG and the Heung have asked why statutory plans are not good enough. They are not good enough because the director of the AFCD will have lost control over the country parks. The EPD has no control, and once zoned for village development, the Town Planning Board will have lost all control. And this is bad news, because the demand for small houses is infinite. Once the V-zones are full, Town Planning Board will approve houses in the agricultural zones and in the green belts in those enclaves. Village-type developments are not led by layout plans for the villages. They result into chaotic layout of properties. There is no provision for public works in the villages. No provision for public works for site formation, roads, parking, drainage or sewerage. There is individual site formation. There is individual drainage system running water straight into the streams nearby. There is no sewage treatment except for septic tanks and soak-away pits, percolating the dirty water of our sewage into the nearby waters. There is no access for parking, and the villagers commonly build their own roads, their own parking areas on government land, completely without authority, as we have seen in Paklap, and as the director of AFCD has approved recently a road to replace the illegal road in Paklap. He knows what the problems are with allowing houses in the villages, in the enclaves. So if development in enclaves is to be guided by statutory plans, government must implement strict additional controls, limit developments based on the carrying capacity of the country parks, control development with layout plans, provide quality works, get public money to build the sewage, drainage, roads and parking, to retain control over the small houses by putting them under column 2 instead of column 1, to determine the developments in enclaves as designated projects which require the approval from the EPD and so that they require an environmental permit under the EIA ordinance. But is government willing to do that? And if they're not willing to do that, then all those enclaves should be protected by including them into the country park. That will give the power to the director of AFCD to assess any use and any development of the land, including the building of a small house, based on merits, based on the land status, location, nature conservation, landscape and visual impacts, the country park uses and the facilities, and whether the enjoyment and amenities of each country park as a whole will be reduced by allowing those small houses to be built. It also gives the director of AOCD the powers to patrol the land, to invest in facilities, and to manage and to enforce control over the land users. But of course, if we do that, we have to give the AFCD additional resources. If we ask them to do this without giving them more money, they can't do their job. So if we are going to put those pieces of land, the enclaves, under the country park ordinance, we have to give the AFCD resources to do the work properly. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sim， 民主海迪先生土地正義。
Thank you very much, Mr. Chu.
嘢係一個連續嘅整體。
We think the environs and the villages are a whole. We cannot be on one side only. The past 30 years, the government only looks after the rural areas, but it doesn't take care of the villages, so that small houses and warehouses eat into these areas. So the villages are completely distorted. And for instance, the new mode where village houses take charge is unsustainable, and many of the houses are under the control of powerful people. Now, the situation is self-destructive. The enclaves are another extreme. The members of the public feel that the villages in the enclaves are part of the countryside, of the country park, so the houses become derelict. We think this is not satisfactory. The original villagers will lose their natural homes, and people cannot experience real countryside life. We have only one kind of green. Our association feels that villages within the enclaves gives us a new opportunity of developing a new mode of sustainable villages. We need to protect them with a new system, and also the government needs to provide more resources so that sustainable recultivation can begin. We support villages in enclaves should be included in country parks, but the country parks should be renamed as countryside or rural parks, and the government should help the original inhabitants and the green groups to introduce sustainable plans, including the protection of these houses. There should be greenhouses designed for each village. The cultural activities, agricultural activities should be protected. The government should provide policy assistance, let the villagers operate village hostels, and to revive the village economy. Now, those owners who are not willing to participate, they should be compensated by the government, and the green groups who feel that the owners should not. So now we have been thinking inside a box. So the countryside and the villages should be cared for at the same time. We cannot just consider the interests of the owners. The government should be flexible and be innovative in its thinking. Next, Mr. Chen Tak-nan of the Greeners Action. We support the inclusion of Taiwan with its 3 enclaves to be included in Country Park. Only then can we afford them legal protection. Now, the country park areas should be enjoyed by the public. In the past, these enclaves have been in harmony with the country parks, but now some of these villages are now dilapidated, and the developers are encroaching on them. So the harmonious co-development is losing out. Now, if we overdevelop these areas, then it's against the purpose of country parks. Country parks should be an asset to be enjoyed by the broad public and not by minority. We think that the government should review the situation of other enclaves. There are over 70 enclaves in Hong Kong. 40 of them are not under any land planning, and some of them are under the threat of large-scale development. We think that the authorities should take the initiative to review these enclaves. Many of them are derelict. They are under the threat from developers, and they should be incorporated into country parks, or at least be considered for that priority. Now, as Paul said, some land uses, there are gray areas that are exploited by developers for development. Now, these legal loopholes cause some rural areas to be under threat. The Greeners Action feels that the ecological welfare and the welfare of these areas should be a combined objectives in order to have a win-win situation. We should preserve the land and its ecological merits, and the villagers can continue at the same time to enjoy the traditional life, and they also will not suffer the damages of future large-scale development. Greeners Action also hopes to increase the transparency of users of private land right now. Now, the private land within country parks, so that the broad public will not be unduly worried, and also the landowners will know the scope of their rights, to what extent they can make use of the land or develop it. So when there's this greater transparency, then there will not be we won't find owners who are not clear and resisting unduly the inclusion in country parks. So overall, we hope to uphold ecology and leave a good environment for the posterity. Thank you. Now, we have issued to you just now 3 developments. 3 papers. These are the supplementary documents from the EP, Planning Department. And now we have the Worldwide Fund. Now, while Worldwide Fund, WWF, supports the government initiative. Now, these enclaves, even though they were not part of country parks, they are actually organically a continuous part. For instance, Tai Long Sai Wan is really a part of the country park around it. We have wetlands and streams and so on. At the same time, the Tai Long Sai Wan scenic value is extremely high. In 2006, the Friends of Hong Kong Country Parks named it the #1 in Hong Kong, and however, the 2012 incident shows that there are loopholes. These land areas that are not under any kind of planning control, so the AFCD and the planning department cannot take any law enforcing action. So we feel that only by inclusion of Tai Long Sai Wan in country parks can we protect the scenic value of Tai Long Sai Wan. Now, after Tai Long Sai Wan is incorporated, the AFCD can monitor and manage the ecology in the area, and it can also use its facilities, resources to include the local facilities. It can upgrade the ecology and the recreational value and so on. Now, this method of or initiative is not really available in the town planning ordinance. So that's one reason why it has to be included in country park. And also the Hoi Ha, Solopun, and Park Lap, the initiatives there, we can see that part of the areas have been subjected to destruction and then development. Now, if so these initiatives will afford them protection of the ecology. The inclusion of areas into the planning process may not necessarily protect these enclaves. So the Worldwide Fund feels that only by inclusion of the Tai Long Sai Wan include into the country park can the ecological value, ecology be protected from undue development. Now, the fund feels that this is in response to the 2011-12 policy address and the concern of the public, and it's a very useful first step. Thank you, Dr. Michael Lau. Now, just to clarify, under the negative vetting procedure, the LegCo does not have a role of passing the legislation. We can only propose amendment or repeal. Next, Green Sense, Ms. Ho Ka Po. Now we support the government initiative regarding the three enclaves, that is Tai Long Sai Wan, Kam Sang, and Yuen Ton. Now, earlier it was revealed that some non-country park areas of land in Tai Long Sai Wan has been subjected to damage, and the public has taken matters into their hands on the internet and so on. So the green groups are concerned about countryside land being damaged. Now, as the CE said, the country parks are more than serving an ecology purpose. Now, we have different areas of high ecological value and biodiversity. These are natural resources that should be enjoyed by the public, and we also protect the reservoirs and provide recreation for the public. So these three and other enclaves, by including them into country parks, afford them a certain level of protection. Now, the country parks, with regard to recreation and ecology, they are very important as a buffer area. So we welcome the initiative, and we hope that the government and the members appreciate that the green areas are a very useful buffer between built-up areas and nature. Without these buffers, then there wouldn't be the balance needed. So the government officials and the members should take heed, and so that these green belts should not be used for development. And with the AFCD officials being here, we hope that the government would note that the public has certain aspirations about the protection of country parks and these enclaves, and also they want to protect our waters, because these are also important resources under threat from man-made pollution and construction works. And finally, we are very glad that the government has listened to the public, and it has protected these beautiful places. Next, Mr. Liu Han, Heung Cook, New Territories, ex-official executive councillor. Now, the Heung Cook represents villagers of the New Territories. The New Territories residents absolutely support conservation. For hundreds of years, the villages have been very well conserved. We understand that sustainable development is very important for agricultural society. For this reason, in the 70s of the last century, there was the countryside, country's park authority, and many villages are put within country parks. And we sacrificed a lot because the villagers were able to cut firewood on the hillsides, and they have sacrificed that. There was absolutely no compensation. Now, these country parks are now surrounding the enclaves. The government offered them no facilities, no roads, no facilities for daily life.
So people who have to study or work cannot live there, and the villages are abandoned as a result. And then it is said that the villages are abandoned, so there is no need for facilities, and therefore, again, no facilities are provided, and therefore there is no development. Now, if the government proposes to include such land into the country park, it is not just. Our core values in Hong Kong are fairness and justice. Let us take a look at conservation or heritage conservation. In the last few years, is it that the government doesn't have to pay anything? Like King Yin Lane. The government exchanged King Yin Lane with a piece of land worth $3 billion. Hotong Gardens, the owner does not accept the conditions proposed by the administration, and the government just has to take back its proposal. And what about the coastal waters? And there is a ban on trawling in the waters. The government put out a lot of money to stop the trawlers from continuing their operation. And also air quality, the EPD also proposed to provide an incentive for owners of pre-Euro diesel vehicles, so they would change to newer models. Since the government has always deployed resources to achieve the purpose of conservation, why is it that you're not doing this for New Territories villages? Is this just? Is this fair? The director and the bureau secretary both said that such inclusion would not affect the title of the owners and there is no impact on village houses or small houses. But the fact is, over the last decade or so, only a very small number, actually only two small houses have been given permission to be built within country parks. In fact, the land is not just for use per se, there is also a potential value to the land. If there is no potential value, the villagers wouldn't know what to do with it. This order is something that has appeared in an unjust society. If LegCo pursues justice, you should repeal the order. You should not allow it to continue to exist.
Please.
Mr. Roger NISSIM.
Thank you very much. I make this submission as an individual who's resided in Hong Kong for over 40 years, and I'm one of the 12 million people who annually enjoy the natural beauty and tranquility that our country parks provide. These country parks are in fact a vital ingredient that makes Hong Kong a livable metropolis. It is still possible to walk for 3 hours or more and not meet anybody, so you really get a feel of getting away from it all, and this provides Hong Kong citizens, like myself, an important life balance, in contrast to the hectic, sometimes frantic, urban lifestyle that generally dominates our lives. Nothing must be done to destroy the unique quality that our country parks provide, and I am most concerned by some of the recent statements being made by our policy secretaries that may undermine this. I refer, of course, to the treatment of the enclaves, 3 of which are the subject of today's discussion. By definition, an enclave is, in most cases, situated in the heart of an existing country park, usually without road access and surrounded by pristine countryside. Dai Long Sai Wan is one such enclave. Situated a good half an hour's walk from a road, it sits adjacent to Section 2 of the Maclehose Trail and is next to one of the most beautiful beaches not only in Hong Kong but in Asia. Consequently, the proposal to include this area within the adjoining country park is obviously the only meaningful way the current beauty of this area can be guaranteed to be preserved. This would also then be consistent with the statements made by the Chief Executive in his 2013 policy address, with its declarations for protection of our country parks, enclaves and areas of high conservation value, in compliance with our conservation obligations, and these are international obligations under the Convention of Biological Diversity, which must now be implemented in Hong Kong. Further, I consider that these enclaves to be analogous to Victoria Harbour, where there is now an established presumption against further reclamation in order to protect it. Similarly, in these enclaves, in order to ensure that they have proper and adequate protection, there must now be established a presumption against any new development. I have no objection to preserving existing development rights, but conservation must come first. In closing, I would say I've read Mr. Barretto's submission and support it totally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. NISSIM. 跟住係長出
Next, Mr. Heung from the Conservancy Association. Thank you, Chairman. The Conservancy Association supports the inclusion of the 3 enclaves into the 3 country parks concerned. I think there is not too much controversy with 2 of the enclaves, but only with Tai Long Sai Wan. As the administration pointed out in its papers, a lot of the enclave concerned is government land, but there has been no active management of the land. The present proposal can make the government shoulder its responsibilities, so resources will be plowed into Tai Long Sai Wan to conserve it and also to improve the basic infrastructure there. Some speakers said that Tai Long Sai Wan in 2010 was damaged and it was developed into a private garden. It was only after the concerted efforts of the public and different organizations that it was salvaged. There was a DPA set up in order to prevent the building of luxury flats there. However, in the interim, we could see that at the site there are damages done. And in fact, government land is still encroached upon. If Tai Long Sai Wan will be included in the country park, it will prevent any other large-scale development program that can damage the nearby country park. In 2010, we saw what happened. I think everybody wouldn't want to see it repeated. Villagers are concerned that by including Tai Long Sai Wan into the country park, their rights would be eroded, including the building of small houses and rehabilitation of agricultural land, etc. The Conservancy Association would see that according to the present arrangement, villages would have to apply to the government in order to build small houses. Even if it is within the country park, the same arrangement will continue. I'm sure the AFCD will approve or otherwise the applications using the principle of conserving the country park and whether any damage will be done. I think it is just what we are doing at present. We don't think there will be a negative impact on house building. As for rehabilitation, we can see that most leases always permit agricultural use. By having this within the country park, we don't think villages' existing rights to agriculture will be eroded. Plus, many people would mention the town planning ordinance and ask whether private agricultural land can be protected by the TPO. However, we'd like to emphasize that even if this site will be zoned for natural conservation, it doesn't mean that the government does not have to put in resources to improve the natural environment. Or else you're not actually conserving the land. Now, if you have this proposal to include it in the country park, then certainly the government will put in resources to protect the ecology and also to provide basic infrastructure by having roads or some signage for visitors, and also to increase the number of refuse collection, etc. This will be beneficial to villages. And it was mentioned that perhaps the Environment and Conservation Fund can give resources so villages have incentive in order to conserve their private land, and by so doing they can also earn a living. I think this can be discussed. Last but not least, I hope the government can also step up its protection on other enclaves. Thank you. Mr. Barreto.
Roy Barreto. I've sent in a written submission which I will not read. I'll refer to some of the headings as I go along. Basically, Madam Chairman, the position is this. In country parks, the presumption is for conservation, recreation and landscape protection. That's the priority. The presumption is against new development and against increasing the pressures for development by increasing village zones. How is the balance achieved? Government has provided the solution. Balance is achieved by protecting the country park's integrity as a whole via the enclave policy, country park enclave policy of May 2011. That was the results of what we learned in the Tai Long Wan incident of 2000 and the Tai Long Sai Wan incident of 2010. Those two scandals resulted in huge public objection to the privatization of our countryside. So the balance is achieved by protecting the integrity of those enclaves on one side and development as usual elsewhere outside the country parks. Secondly, balance is achieved by retention of the existing building lots in the country park enclaves. There's enough for genuine indigenous villager need. It's not just demand for outsiders or for sale to outsiders. It's for genuine need. There should be no increase in village zones for sale to outsiders. We know how many villages are deserted with zero genuine need. For example, even Hoi Ha village, which has a good road, good facilities, and yet what has happened? In 20 years, 7 houses have been built, ostensibly for indigenous villages, and none of those 7 are occupied by the original applicant. Madam, I point out in my paper, from paragraphs 1 to 8, the breaches of the enclave policy which are taking place now. Paragraph 9 to 11, I set out the correct principles. Paragraph 12, we set out the solutions. It's a multiple-pronged approach. Paragraph 22, we set out the abuses, whereby there's misrepresentation and false declarations obtained regularly, as we can see from court cases. We show how, if the law is properly enforced, the proper balance will be achieved. We point out some case studies for some examples, and I've referred to the Hoi Ha case, the Solopun case, and others. We then set out that the correct solution is to support the government on this Tai Long Sai Wan Country Park extension. It is obviously the right thing in consonant with our international obligations under the Convention as of May 2011. We have an additional layer of responsibility now. The Convention is law in the mainland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barato. Mo Ka Hong.
Mr. Joseph Mo Ka Hong. Thank you, Chairman. I'm a member of the Country and Marine Parks Board. Since I am a member of the board, I would like to do my very best to help the AFCD to protect our country parks. If Sai Wan will be included into the country park, I like to say why I support it. The Heung Kok Sai Wan Concern Group on the 22nd of June 2013 sought a meeting with Mr. Wong Kam Sing, the Secretary for Environment. We explained to the Secretary that there was a promise made by the Hong Kong government to the Heung Kok before, and that is any private land, any village being inhabited, that should not be included in the country park. This is a record of meeting in 1979. It is still kept by the Heung Kok. There was a case where an inhabited village was included in a country park wrongly, and because of this undertaking made, Kap Long village was taken out of the boundary of the country park. And at the same time, the undertaking also pointed out that the country park should be at least 500 feet away from villages, so that villages can extend their villages if needed. The 77 enclaves exist because the government and villagers have agreed that, or actually, they could not agree on a compensation package on land between country parks and villages, which is private land. Mr. Wong Kam Sing was very nice, saying that within 3 months, the Heung Kok would be given a specific answer as to how it would be handled. However, until today, nothing has come from the Secretary.
So we are disappointed at the going back on their word. Now, the villagers, one of them is seeking judicial review, and now the matter is under a subcommittee of LegCo. We think that the Heung Kok thinks that this is not working according to the law. Now, the chairperson explained the negative vetting procedure, but our feeling is that this subcommittee is acting outside the court in its discussions. It's not really respecting the judicial independence, and it's passing judgment before the court has decided. So it's against legal judicial independence. Now, we have a checks and balance system in Hong Kong with the courts vis-a-vis the executive and the legislatures. So this is a useful order that's now being disrupted. We think that there should be an amendment to terminate this initiative. We should respect the court's decision. We should wait for the decision to come out. We should further clarify that negative vetting means that the law becomes effective first, and then there is scrutiny. LegCo has also inquired with the executive branch on the stage of the judicial review, but we haven't obtained the details. So according to the legal advisor, we should go ahead with the scrutiny first. Next, Ms. Carmen Chen. Now, I am speaking as an individual. I hope that the electrical members can turn down this order. Now, members of the public and many green groups, in view of the 2010 incident, do feel that there should be some control to protect our beautiful landscape. However, I wish to share with you that under Hong Kong laws, the incorporation of Sai Wan into country parks is not the only solution, and we should consider that at Sai Wan, the villagers consider Sai Wan to be their home. In Hong Kong, there is basic law protecting private rights, property rights, and just now, deputations have expressed the misunderstanding that by including Sai Wan into country parks, we wouldn't have encroachment by container yards and so on. Now, we should realize where Sai Wan is. Even if we incorporate Sai Wan in the official plans, you can't develop village houses on a large scale or offer access to containers in a big way. Many Hong Kong residents don't even know where Sai Wan is. We hope you can consider carefully the Sai Wan location. Now, back then in 2010, in that incident, many people expressed many views, mainly because there wasn't a development plan, and afterwards the government quickly came up with the draft DPA under the town planning ordinance, and in the 3 years since then, there has been no damage done to the area. So the outline zoning plan is for villagers of Sai Wan to apply to build village homes. It's not easy under the OZP, and many people are concerned whether the V zone will be expanded. Now, in the new territories, all the land that can be used to build village homes are private land, and our private property rights are protected under Hong Kong law. You do not want your home or your property to be sacrificed to the enjoyment of the majority. We should be respected in that regard. Now, speakers said whether expressed concern whether the V zones would get bigger and bigger. Now, in village environs, only private land can be used to build village homes, and also we have to obtain control from the town planning board in the cases where it's agricultural land. So I think the town planning ordinance already offers enough protection for conservation. Also, if Sai Wan Village is incorporated into country park, I tend to doubt whether to be suspicious whether there is another instance of collusion between the government and private sector. Maybe somebody doesn't want their views to be blocked in front of the house. Next, Mr. Lai Yan. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Sai Wan incident. Now, back then, when the government instituted country parks, there was an issue at Sai Wan. That is, there were some enclaves because the government back then respected the rights of indigenous residents and their private property, and the villagers were able to apply to develop village houses. So certain promises have been made. So country parks have to be 300 to 500 feet away from villages. Private land cannot be incorporated into country parks. That's what it means. Now, the government is now incorporating the Saiwan enclaves. So this is going against the promise back then when country parks were introduced. Now, I think Hong Kong residents, like Saiwan villagers, should value the Saiwan piece of land. You should care for and protect this land so from any kind of damage. The government should treasure or value the or respect the agreement and promise made to New Territories residents back then. The Saiwan village should not be incorporated. I think the gazetting should be withdrawn. Next, Mr. Lai Kwan, I believe he will show us a video, and Mr. Liu Ban will help. Mr. Lai, where's your hometown? I'm from Taiwan. How old are you? How long have you been in UK? I'm 85. I've been here over 50 years. Why did you come to the UK? Because we couldn't make a living by agriculture. Back home there wasn't enough water, so I came over. Now, when you came to UK, were able to make a living? What kind of work did you do? We had a hard time. Worked in restaurants, odd jobs, dishwashing, cleaning, washing toilets. Later, I learned cooking. So I've been a cook for dozens of years. Now, you had such a hard time making a living. What objective or wish do you have? Now, I wanted to make enough money to go back to Taiwan, clean up the place, and live there. Now, have you gone back to your home village to take a look? I did when I was young. And later I didn't get any chance. I lost the opportunity because I'm now old and I couldn't move around easily. Are there many people in your predicament? Yes. In my village, several tens of people are like me. Now, the government says that the whole Taiwan village will be included in country park, so you will have even less chance in the future, right? Yeah. The government is conserving nothing. It's not conserving people. So how can it conserve the village? The village is being destroyed. Other governments build roads and bridges for the people. But the villagers are being chased out. They are inhumane. Why the heck would I go back now? Now, an old person who has lived away from his home country or home city for many decades, and he is now being kept away from the government. How can we have hope in this government? Thank you, Mr. Lai Kwan. Next, Mr. Thomas Lai. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members. Taiwan is now inhabited by three types of people. First, 20-odd people continue to live in Taiwan. Others, like me, continue to wander around in other parts of Hong Kong. And then there's another group who have moved to the UK. It's all because there was the building of the reservoir back then, and so Taiwan was left with no water. People couldn't make a living. Children couldn't go to school. And now, I, in Hong Kong, has become a wanderer. I have no fixed place of abode. I failed to apply for public housing because I have nutritious indigenous village home rights. Now I applied to build a village house in a place like Taiwan. There's so little transport facility. How can children go to school? How can I go to work? The government disregards the rights of Taiwaners like me, including human rights. It's completely depriving us of our political rights. Madam Chair, members, such a government is talking about conservation of Taiwan. Conservation is something every person should engage in. If the public that feels that conservation is hurting me, then what should we do? My wife said, well, it's even a matter of life and death. The government is now robbing us of everything. There is no welfare at all. I don't even get any concession on the electricity offered by the government. I'm now a wanderer. The government is now going so far as incorporating Taiwan into Country Park. Now, I showed you a document. Mr. CHEUNG member applied on my behalf for recultivation, but the government says that I am telling a lie. It say that I have no license for agriculture because I'm in my 60s. I considered going back to resume agriculture to protect my livelihood, but it was turned down. Since the planning up to now, the government has been telling a lie. It says government is uninhabited. That's a lie. It's saying that there are certain monuments or artifacts under excavation. If you go there, you can see there's none. It's a lie.
I also brought a JL case. It was me. That's all from me. Thank you, Mr. Thomas Lai. Hong Kong Hiking Association, China. The chairman, Mr. Chow Kwok-kyung. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to say here that we are a hiking association which has been in Hong Kong for over 30 years. What is our view towards country parks and what is our view towards the present order? In the past, there were no hiking trails, nothing. But now, we have very good links taking us to the country parks. Now, in the past, when we went to the rural area, we actually had some arguments with the villagers because villagers did not want us to go into their fields, not even for a visit. But later on, there were more hikers, and then we reached a consensus. The villagers would buy drinks and food for us because we could not bring so much food and drinks on our hiking expedition, and then we bought from them. Now, so what did the government do? All this time. Actually, we thank the government for putting in a whole package of facilities so we can enjoy the country parks. I think many honorable members, if you are involved in land sales, you actually can see that they also go hiking in the country parks. I hope they were not doing a site visit in order to find a site for building houses. I hope they would go there to appreciate nature. We love nature as much as you do, like members of the public. Out of over 1,000 square kilometers, we have 400 being used as country parks. This is not done in any other place. Look at Singapore. Now, do they have marine parks, geo parks, and country parks? They can't give you any answers. The mainland is a big place indeed, but they lag far behind us in terms of facilities at country parks. Every year, 13 million people visit our country parks, many of them mainlanders coming to Hong Kong. They knew that our country parks are very well built, they are well connected, and they are safe. I can tell you that once I did hiking in Shenzhen on the mainland, and I asked how this road would go, and then the other person said, "Are you going to go up?" I said, "Yes." He just said, "So good luck." But in Hong Kong, we have the 502 signal for getting help, and also telecommunications. We have done a lot, and now the coverage is quite wide. I think this depends on one mechanism, and the mechanism is how we can conserve the tranquility and integrity of our country parks so that it has integrity and it remains safe. We must have a mechanism to do this, or else we cannot do what we are doing. After SARS, many people have taken to hiking. Later on, there will be more retirees in Hong Kong, and going to country parks may be their only activity. I hope enclaves can be included in country parks. Thank you. Next, Mr. Andy Yu from the Civic Party. Chairman, members, officials. I represent the Civic Party. I'm Andy Yu. Kem San, Yuen Tun, and Tai Lon Sai Wan will be included in country parks because they have conservation value. The Civic Party supports this wholeheartedly. But the government has to reflect on one point, and that is the conservation policy for country parks in Hong Kong. The enclaves are the places which have been neglected so that land with high ecological value has been damaged. This shows that the government would just like to turn in some homework when it is asked to do, and it is not doing its best. In 2012, for example, look at Tai Lon Sai Wan Country Park here. Almost 1 hectare of vegetation was uprooted and it was turned into a private park. The public showed a lot of concern, and a petition to protect Tai Lon Sai Wan was arranged. And in the end, the enclave was included into the protected area of country parks as a result. And earlier on, an official proposed that we should build public housing in the rural area. The public were concerned, and green groups were alarmed. Yes, we have scarce land in Hong Kong, but it doesn't mean you have to go into country parks. We are called a concrete jungle, and we don't have that many country parks after all. We don't want what country parks we have to be lost. Also, the Civic Party is of the view that the remaining enclaves should be included into CP areas as soon as possible, so land developers will not further damage what country parks we have remaining in the name of development. And also through statutory planning processes, the government should protect our CPs so tourists and Hong Kong people can still appreciate our beautiful nature and not just to live in a concrete jungle like Hong Kong. Last but not least, we hope we can live in a Hong Kong with country parks, but not a Hong Kong which had country parks. Thank you. Next, Heung Rural Committee Chairman, Mr. Leung Fuk Yuen. Thank you, Chairman and members. I am the Chairman of the Heung Rural Committee. I am Leung Fuk Yuen. Our Rural Committee objects to the order because in 1979, the government said at the Country Parks Management Board that it would give an undertaking to villages, but it had not delivered its promise. I still have such documents with me. It reads what are the advantages of country parks, and it says in a pamphlet that villages were convinced and lobbied by the government to set up country parks, and the undertakings were given in black and white. But now you have not delivered your promise. Even private land in enclaves is snatched away by government. I think you should make the best use of these enclaves, and I would propose that you should go for conservancy and development together. There should be diverse development in country parks. Sometimes you don't even allow any kiosks for the selling of soft drinks. We applied for over a decade, but we had no approval. This is just to convenience park goers. We were just talking about the selling of soft drinks and snacks. I think you should streamline the application procedures. And at the same time, abandoned villages should be revitalized by the building of low-rise hostels, for example. Hong Kong people have a hectic schedule, and they should make the best use of their holidays and day-offs and go to country parks for relaxation. After the country parks board was set up, just think about it. Maybe they did not have the resources they needed. They would only manage the parks. They would set up signs and pick up rubbish and repair the trails only. Is this unique in Hong Kong? There are country parks all over the world. There are these leisure farms for people to visit, and also other low-rise, low-budget hostels for people to spend the night if they visit these parks. So you should not snatch away villages' land. We should have fairness and justice in Hong Kong. Conservation and private property and making the best use of country park land, all these should be reflected upon so we can strike a good balance. Thank you. Mr. Tsang Yok-on, Shuttlecock, Mui Tsi Lam Village representative. I'm one of the VR in remote Shuttlecock villages. I am here because I don't want the government to repeat what it did wrongly. I myself strongly object to including enclaves in country parks. This is a very foolish act, and on the part of the government, it lacks political wisdom. Unless it is totally government land, or else you are depriving the title rights of the title owners. You are just like the Communist Party taking away people's property. And Mr. Lam Chiu-ying said we should not even touch upon the country parks. I don't think so. You should review the situation now because control and management has been done for over a decade. I live in a remote village. I'm surrounded by a country park, and I know what it is like. Starting from 2001, now we are in 2013, I have been closely working together with the AFCD from Mr. Chen Chun-yun, and then we have now Mr. Leung, the Deputy Director. We also have Dr. Wong, and also we have Mr. Wong Ping Kong, the Director. We have been working closely together to step up facilities in country parks. I don't think the existing facilities are enough. We should do a lot more to perfect the situation. If private land is further included in CPs, I would doubt whether the AFCD has the ability to manage so much private land. And if you do such messy planning, there will be a lot of repercussions. Hong Kong is now in a mess already. We don't want to have too many controversies brought about by the government. Also, on enclaves, if we can have infrastructure, if we can have tourist facilities, please do not always assume that there is conspiracy. Just like some years ago, a very old person in his 80s went back to rehabilitate his village, and that is his life's hope. He would like to go back to his homeland to rehabilitate his village. I have his picture with me. And then the green groups would apply the conspiracy theory to say that person was turning his village into another Discovery Park or Discovery Bay. Why can't we be helped to rehabilitate our village? You are not in our shoes, and you are pointing fingers at us. But I think the government should know that you should give the greatest weight to the stakeholders' views, because we are affected by country parks. Members, we only have 2 of you here, and it's quite unfortunate, or 3. I'd like to tell you that there should be more, well, including the chairman, we have 3. The situation of remote villages are just like Jews before the building of Israel. Now, you are in Happy Valley, but I'm maybe on the mainland. If you allow the government to put private land into country parks for conservation, you are giving a candle to the devil. This is collective bullying. I hope you will move a motion to repeal the order which you said has already become law. I really hope that will be done. And green groups, I would give you this advice. Put yourself in our shoes. Don't just look at us from outside. Please try to come to Mui Tsi Lam. Stay there for a night. We don't have water. We don't have electricity. Just look at this. This is how our village looks now. So when you discuss these issues, you must apply a multi-angle approach. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Leung Wo-heng, Sai Kung North Rural Committee representative. Now, the speakers, including those from green groups, agreed that Tai Long Sai Wan is a very beautiful place. It should be conserved. Now, this is all to the credit of the indigenous villagers. They have lived in Sai Wan for generations. They have cared for the environment so that it's so treasured by Hong Kong people and considered worthy of conservation. And let me ask, what has the government done for these past decades, including the AFCD? Now, many years ago, they tried to build up the so-called domestic or local economy in many parts of new territories. What has come of that? And now they want to incorporate private land of Tai Long Sai Wan into country parks. So local residents have very, very slim chance of building a house for their homes. The LegCo should vote down the legislation. Are there other solutions? Yes. I believe Mr. Chu just now said that there can be alternative development. you can be flexible. If there are other ways and means to develop village houses, we can accept that. We can make the village houses very beautiful in keeping with the environment. Next, Mr. Lok Shui-sang, Chairman of CHEUNG Rural Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I strongly object the government going against the law and public opinion and incorporating Tai Long Sai Wan enclaves by gazetting into country parks. It wants to make this part of Sai Kung East Country Park. The Sai Kung Rural Committee and villagers strongly oppose and reprimand this action. We want the action to be discontinued. Members should not support this unjust action. We object the arbitrary incorporation of Tai Long Sai Wan enclaves. Now, when the British Hong Kong government delineated the country parks, it excluded the enclaves because it offered some degree of respect for human rights of the villagers and respected their ways of life. The present government has listened to the wrong people and it has gone against the deeds, and the private land has been turned into parks, and it has abrogated our rights for homes. It's illegal. The government has blindly incorporated private land and homes into the Sai Kung East Country Park and seeks to conserve it. There's no legal basis, and it wants to make this a fait accompli before the judicial review outcome is available. Why is it that the villagers have no right to protect their home and land? Why is it that our applications are turned down and our right of recultivation of the land is taken away? Now, the current government ignores the district council, the rural committees, and the villagers. It's listening to the wrong opinions, and even though there might be procedural justice, it's going against natural law. In this meeting with the Sai Kung Rural Committee, the heads of the EPD and AFCD say that there are now over 400 village houses, showing that the incorporated land allow villagers to build homes. Now, actually, these homes were built before. There have only been 2 or 3 new approvals. The government is trying to confound people, confuse people. Now, the villagers do not want compensation. They want rather their ways of life to be preserved. The Long Yun land for recultivation is only available for application by certain green groups. The villagers and rural committee do not qualify. This is robbing people of their land. There is no development opportunity for the villagers. Thank you. Time is up. Next, Mr. Lee Ka Leung of Sai Kung District Council. In 2012, we established a concern group for the Sai Wan issue. We had meetings with the villagers, and we twice visited the location, and we objected and lodged our report with the president of LegCo. Now, if Tai Long Sai Wan is incorporated into Sai Kung East Country Park, then the villagers of daily life, the daily life would be affected. The government incorporates private land into country parks. It hasn't offered enough protection to the villagers and property owners. The Country and Marine Parks board hasn't fully considered our views, and without our consent, the incorporation has been gazetted. There hasn't been complete and long-term planning for the development of Sai Wan, and yet it has gone ahead with this arbitrary inclusion. It should consider carefully the views of the stakeholders and consider our other alternatives and consult the district council and other stakeholders. There should be adequate compensation. In the document, the government should state what works can be conducted by the villagers and those projects that can be favorably considered, and it should state the time for application. There should be long-term development studies so that Hong Kong people and the Sai Wan villagers can benefit from the development of Sai Wan. Now, that's the report from the district council, and here are my personal views. Even though Sai Wan village is an enclave, it's still a very beautiful spot. It has been frequented by villagers, and there's a beautiful beach. This is all due to the work of the villagers. The Country and Marine Parks Board has the ability to run the country parks. They see a beautiful spot and they want to take it for themselves, and yet they cannot care for it properly. The villagers will become even more dilapidated. Now, it will be a deserted area. Now, the villagers cannot go through the arduous application procedures. In the end, it's the big developers who can buy up the land cheaply, and then they can offer to swap the land and develop the land. Now, just now somebody said that Hong Kong country parks are better than those in other countries. Now it's all due to the efforts by the villagers. If you chase them away, what will happen? Now, people talk about the 2010 Lo Ning-sing incident. Now, the district council went for visit twice. We found that the land has not become worse. It has become more beautiful. It has not become a private back garden. It has always been private land. We should respect the rights of private property. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Next, Mr. Yao Yok Lun, member Sai Kung District Council. We come here with a heavy heart to this meeting. If we include Tai Long Sai Wan village into country park, we would object strongly because the government hasn't consulted adequately or studied the matter thoroughly, and it has tried to pass the law in LegCo in a hurry. This is rash. Now, this can bring long-term ill effects. It can suffocate the long-term development for Hong Kong. Sai Kung residents and most of DC members have striven for Sai Kung to become the real back garden for Hong Kong people, and this is now becoming a quite unlikely. For DC councillors like us who try to serve Sai Kung. In the past few years, the District Council passed many motions to try to protect our land. We hope the government can introduce long-term strategies to turn deserted land in new territories into productive places. The government is ruling like a colonial government. It has no long-term strategy. The District Council members of Sai Kung, irrespective of political party, attach great importance to the development opportunities for Sai Kung. In particular, Sai Kung is now home to a World Geopark, and it is now a natural World Heritage site, and we hope the government can institute long-term plans for reasonable development. In March 2010, on the 8th of the month, we asked the government to improve the roads and facilities for the Sai Kung Geopark. We hope that it could be handled on a cross-departmental approach, and yet the FCD and the Water Works Department only asked the police to issue summonses. So they try to shirk the responsibility. And also we asked the government to introduce a policy package to introduce green transport for the geopark, and so that we can have a resort-style Sai Kung district for people to enjoy. Now in Sai Kung and Tai Po there are 2 reservoirs, and these areas are served by very few roads. Almost 100 villages are becoming decrepit. Now, since in the 16 years since the reunification, things have gotten worse than before. Now, in other countries, they try to protect a place even if there's only one house standing on it.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. Next, Mr. CHEUNG, Association for Geoconservation, Hong Kong. Just now, some speakers said that our village will be annihilated, that there would be snatching of land, and they have no home to return to. I think the government should explain things, because there may be some misunderstanding about the rights of people in enclaves. And I'd like to tell you 2 stories today. Number 1, in 2008, the United Nations official came to Hong Kong to take a look, and he said that Sai Kung was beautiful. He had been to Hong Kong many times over the last 3 decades, but then it was only in 2008 that he saw the other face of Hong Kong apart from being a concrete jungle, and then this is something we should be proud of. The second story is in 2001, when Hong Kong applied to have a geopark, an expert group came to Hong Kong to study the issue. From Shuttlecock Pier, we took a boat to Lai Chi Wall. Some Greek and Japanese experts saw that on the left, it was along Shuttlecock on the mainland side, there was a lot of construction undergoing. But then on Hong Kong, on this side, there were mangroves, and many migratory birds were nesting there. And they said that it was such a magical, a unique situation, and that it was said that the government should be complimented by managing country parks so well. And they said that actually it was then that they found out why Hong Kong was a unique city in the world. Recently, people always use the word foolish, and also in conjunction with country parks. Actually, we should not use the word foolish to scold people who are responsible for your living. Well, actually, what we should do is to conserve what nature we have, because we do not have a lot of natural resources in Hong Kong. We should be proud of our country parks. We should not really touch them. And we would be foolish not to enforce the law and turn away from injustice in society. Also, there is a handful of people who are selfish and ignorant. And also, if you want to please a minority of people, but you offend the silent majority who are the 7 million people in Hong Kong and who support country parks, then you are foolish. Country parks should be taken as a whole. We cannot segregate them into this part and that part. Therefore, our Conservation Association with 1,600 members would support the order to include enclaves in CPs. I hope the government, villages and green groups can sit down together to see how we can follow this new policy to have a win-win situation. Thank you. Next, Ms. Jenny Quinton from Arc Eden, please.
Thank you. Arc Eden is of the view that supporting the amendment order which proposes to incorporate country park enclaves of Tai Long Sai Wan, Kam Shan and Yung Tung into country park is the best way of preserving them. We wish to preserve the ecological value of enclaves. The country park enclaves are a site of spectacular ecological value and are surrounded by existing country parks but are not currently within these boundaries. Villagers have lived in these enclaves for many generations, and historically the land has been used for predominantly agricultural purposes. Physically and ecologically, these enclaves are inseparable from the wider country park ecosystem. Many of these enclaves are home to ecologically unique habitats, flora and fauna of high conservation importance. So development within Tai Long Sai Wan enclave has highlighted how vulnerable our local ecology and natural heritage have become. Therefore, Arc Eden believes that incorporating enclaves into country parks to safeguard them is the best way. We have suggested solutions for retaining and enhancing rural villages. A long-standing problem for rural villages have been their neglect. Part of Arc Eden's vision is to develop a network of environmental facilities within Hong Kong, using rural schools and abandoned buildings to enhance education for sustainability and environmental protection as part of school curricula. School curricula will become more focused on environmental education in 2015 when the Convention on Biological Diversity comes into force. Also, this would provide employment opportunities for villagers. In developing these environmental facilities, the focus should be on sustainably restoring existing buildings and giving them a new lease of life. Arc Eden has been concerned for many years that old buildings, some heritage listed, abandoned for years, will be lost within 10 years from now if a new use is not found for them. These include many rural villages with their village schools, old temples, ancestral halls, etc. Schools, universities, corporations and groups could help use their skills collaboratively to look after villages and fund the operations. Within environmental centres, local villages could be instrumental in leading coordination and training for sustainable renovation projects. Traditional knowledge of these communities is invaluable, and villagers could become teachers on a variety of local practices, such as farming, medicinal plants, traditional skills, feng shui, woodlands. Traditional skills of the elderly are dying out, but many of these practices are sustainable and must be preserved. Moreover, the amendment order is fundamental also in preventing incompatible development and activities which risk losing the wealth and heritage and local knowledge present within these enclaves. Quickly got time. Education targets in line with the 2015 Convention in Biodiversity. The Hong Kong government announced in early June of 2011 that the Convention of Biodiversity had been formally extended to Hong Kong. As part of this convention, Hong Kong has stated that according to Article 13, it will A, promote and encourage understanding of the importance of and the measure required for the conservation of biological diversity, as well as its propagation through media and the inclusion of these topics in educational programs. The Convention will come into force in 2015, and ARC Eden has the view that the incorporation of the enclaves into country parks will help to fulfill its environmental targets.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jocelyn Ho from Hong Kong Birdwatching Society.
Society fully supports the incorporation of the 3 enclaves into the country park boundary. Country parks are becoming increasingly popular for hikers, photographers, as well as bird watchers. And by incorporating enclaves into country parks, these recreational uses offered by these enclaves would be protected in the long term. Scenic enclaves like the Tai Long Sai Wan should be preserved and made available to the general public. This decision would protect the natural landscape and biodiversity of these enclaves on the basis of the public's interest. We hope the government will provide adequate legislative protection, just as they've promised in the 2010 policy address to safeguard these enclaves. By incorporating these enclaves into the country park boundary, because under the country park ordinance, the optimal level of protection would be provided. This would not only protect the enclaves themselves, but also the surrounding country parks from potential illegal activities as a result of allowing development activities inside the enclaves. We also hope the government will take into consideration what has happened to Tai Long Sai Wan and the illegal activities at Bak Lap and take full measures in avoiding these activities from happening again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, officials, would you like to give an initial response? Mr. Au? Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, we have already submitted a paper to respond to views forwarded at the last meeting. I will take out a few points from that paper in order to respond to the deputations. First of all, we can see that the aspiration of the public is very clear. Starting from 2010 until now, whether it be hikers or average members of the public, they feel that Sai Wan should be included in the country park. This is also our assessment. This is the first point. Many speakers today also pointed to the importance of the inclusion. As to the snatching of land and the deprivation of rights, let me say this again. Also in the paper this time, we have emphasized that including enclaves in CPs would not affect the rights of the owners, and it would not make the land belong to the government. As to the application for small houses, I have already explained in detail that the existing mechanism of application will remain. And the authority has already written a note to specify the various criterion for consideration. There is an approval procedure. The authority is involved, and also the lands department is involved. Also in the paper, we have set out clearly that actually most of the land in Sai Wan belongs to old schedule agricultural lots or are old schedule building lots. We have already said that without prejudice to the authorities' consideration of the facts of each individual case, in general, the authority is of the view that small houses are compatible with country parks. The authority, of course, will consider cases on their individual merits, but this is already in the paper. The 460 hectares of private land, and there are small houses on the land. We think the uses are compatible, but of course this will be subject to application. And then there is another point, as I explained last time. including the enclaves in CPs and OZPs, has this important consequence. Apart from the AFCD's stepped-up role, we are talking about more active management, whether it be refuse collection or improvement of facilities, etc. I think this is mentioned by many speakers today. This is the purpose we'd like to achieve. It is not that we just include the land in country parks. In fact, we want to improve the living environment of the villages, and also so that the enclave can be used also by hikers and other people. Maybe I'd like to stop here, and then we'll be happy to take members' questions. Okay, Mr. Au, thank you. Now the floor is open to members to ask questions. The meeting can go on to 6:30, but I'd like to extend it by 10 minutes so members have time to raise questions. First, 4 minutes for each member. Ms. Elizabeth Quat. Thank you, Chairman. There are many different views indeed today. Some are in support, some have raised very strong objection. The EPD said in his response that with regard to the snatching of land, it is said that there will be no change to the status of the land and small houses can still be built. But I think a lot of people here have a lot to say about this. Now I'd like to give my time to maybe Mr. Leung Fuk Yuen or Mr. Locke, so they can say why they do not agree with the EPD, that they are still of the view that land is being snatched from them. So how much time are you giving them? Each will be given 1.5 minutes, please. Mr. Leung Fuk Yuen. Thank you, Chairman. If private land is included in CPs, as we know, another speaker has been a member of the Country Park Board, it is said that only 2 small houses have been allowed to be built in country parks over the last decade. In a village, there are dozens of people, but only 2 small houses have been allowed to be built. So it amounts to non-approval. And therefore, if the land is included in CPs, then it is up to the Country Parks Board or the Marine Parks Board, which will study the applications. It is not for the Lands Department or the EPD to study the application anymore. So you can see the rightful ownership of owners has been affected. Mr. Locke, please.
No, Madam Chair. Now, according to what I know, now for the approval of village houses in green areas, it's very difficult now under the Town Planning Board. Now, if it's under the country park arrangement, it would be more difficult. It would be at their whim. We would have no say at all. Now, if there are no questions from members, then we do not require an extension. Lo Wai Kwok, Wuchi Wai, Chen Ka Lok. So, extension of 10 minutes. Now, in the last subcommittee meeting, many members made the point to the administration that we didn't quite understand what it is. Why is it that the outline zoning plan in the case of Sai Wan Village was not used, and it says that the country park arrangement would be better. Now it's right. Now, if you want a village house to be approved in an area bordering the country park, it's very difficult, or in a green belt, it's very difficult. So their concern is not undue. Now, these enclaves, now quite a large part of that is in village environs. Now, in past OZP, there are villages, there's agricultural land, there are green belts. Now, if you divide or assign it's not an effective means. It doesn't run well. And so we haven't heard any good answer. Now we've heard the deputations today talking about the problems they've encountered in reality over the past years. Their concerns are not excessive. Now the Sai Kung East Country Park is already a very large one. Now what's controversial is that a lot of these enclaves, a large part of them are is private land with villages in them. I don't know whether there are answers from the administration. We have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9. Mr. Ao, now in our documents we replied to some of these questions on pages 3 and 4. So let me reply to them briefly. Now, in the consideration process, the authority and other departments first see whether the area is suitable for inclusion in country park under the established criteria, which are very strict. And as you can see in the annex, all the principles and criteria are listed in detail. Now, we talked about them last time, so I will not repeat. So there are many pages of criteria. Now, so if it's not suitable for country park arrangement, then of course we have to consider the OZP. Now, for Site 1, after the authority carefully considered there are grounds both from landscape or recreational value, aesthetics, and topology. Overall, it's suitable for being part of a country park, so we don't have to consider the OZP arrangement. Now, and most importantly, in the case of Site 1, there is a need for improvement in management. It's not just control. So in pages 3 and 4, on pages 3 and 4, we say that apart from management and control, now there is initiative in garbage control and other management aspects. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. This involves village house policy in villages of indigenous residents. The government has to help us and take a look what's the actual picture in operation. Now, the hypothetical question is, now if there is no land use change for the indigenous village, then according to the official, you can you can only build a residence or recultivate the land according to the land lease conditions. Now, I'd like to ask, in other indigenous villages, is it that they encounter a similar situation? That is, how many village houses can be built depends on how many pieces of land that are subjected to control for building village exempted houses, new territories exempted houses. Now, the inclusion of Tai Long Site 1 village doesn't really affect it because they can only build houses under those conditions. Yes, it all relates to the policy for nutrients exempted houses. It has to be a thing that is a male villager, and it has to be their land and also has to be in the village. Now, in the last meeting, we heard that even though it now becomes part of country park, the land is still being owned by the villager, whether it's agricultural land or land on which a house can be built. So this hasn't changed. So what's the change now? Is it that if it's not part of country park, then within the enclave you can make changes on the land? Whom do you want to address the question to? Mr. Lee, 1 minute and 20 seconds, please. Now, if the distinction between inclusion in country park and inclusion in OZP is that there is the village environs for building homes, and then you can also have green belt or agricultural land. But if it's in country park, then for every application, you have to go to Lands Department, and you have also to go to the Country and Marine Parks Board. Now, this is very difficult. I also sat on the board. Over 10 years, there were only 2 successful applications, and only when the members do not object. And it takes over 10 years. So that's the distinction between country park and OZP. If under the OZP, actually the villagers don't really object. Now, I of course understand that if it's under OZP, then there would be a lot more change. Now, what whom do you want to ask? Now, for existing enclave, the government has done no planning, so that's the result. Now, this is not sustainable. It has to be either under country park or under OZP. It cannot stay an enclave for long. Now, right now for enclave, you have to apply to the Lands Department, and there would be some Lands Department procedures. Next, Mr. Chen Ka-long. You want the official to answer first? Mr. Leung? Very briefly, I want to clarify. Now, in the past 10 years, the FCD or the authority have received 2 applications for building small houses, and these 2 applications have been considered by us, and we did not object. Mr. Chen Ka-long? Now, I understand that the focus of the discussion today is Tai Long Sai Wan. Now, we seem to see a couple of concerns. We welcome your views, and we note that you are worried that you will lose your property rights, or there will be greater difficulty in application. Now, we have now learned that the property rights are not affected. We see that. Now, the question is whether the process has become more difficult. Now, all along, I have asked the government about the review of the small house, village house policy. Now, it's a problem or issue ever since the days of Mr. CHEUNG. Now, so it's a big issue. It's not just country parks. Even in other places, it's very difficult to apply for building village houses. One has to wait for many years and go through many procedures. So this is a broad policy issue. Whether it's the development panel, we know the chairman is Mr. Lau Wong Fat. It should probably be the venue for discussion of this issue. Now, I believe, firstly, the property rights are not affected. You can still apply. Thirdly, now you will have to go through the Country and Marine Parks Board and the authority, that is the DAFC, would have to consider it. So that's all the distinction there is. So we have to strike a balance between public interest, conservation, development, and property rights. And for me, from the information that I come across, now for enclaves to be incorporated in country parks, that wouldn't affect property rights. It doesn't affect the right to apply. And there is a mechanism that is transparent and fair for assessing the application. And as for the relationship to the small house policy, I think the government still needs to explain clearly. I hope that can be explained at some time, maybe now. Mr. Au? This is not the right occasion to discuss the small house policy, but as explained in our document for the Lands Department and the authority, now they will continue to process the existing, any application under existing procedures. We respect property rights. For village house construction, there is a coordinated approach which is transparent. The mechanism is listed, as you can see in the document and the notes, and the criteria are all published for the villagers and representatives, and we'll do all we can to assist the applications. Now, I'd like to remind those who are here and the deputations. Now, if you haven't given us any written representation, if you have one, please give that to our secretariat as quickly as early as possible. I have a question for the CHEUNG District Council. Now, members of the DC mentioned that road networks, transport within country parks, difficulties for local villagers as they travel in and out. So can we be provided with the district council documents so that we see them ahead of the annual meetings? As I end this meeting, I remind you that we have a scrutiny meeting tomorrow morning at 9.